Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of the Daily Bullet. I'm Paul Lathrop, your host. Joining me today is a good friend. If you've been to Gun Rights Policy Conference, or really, if you've been to gun stores throughout the country, you're probably going to recognize this guy. Derek LeBlanc. Derek, you're the founder of the Kids Safe Foundation, right?
Yes, sir, I am.
Well, before we get into talking about Kids Safe Foundation, that's what we're going to be spending most of our time talking about in the time we have today. I want to ask you a very basic question. What got you into guns, and more specifically, what got you into gun advocacy?
So I guess my journey started at a young age with a Red Ryder BB gun that my father gave me, and then it transitioned to a shotgun at a young age and shooting rim fires living in Oregon. And so from that, I always loved the shooting sports, and I used to hunt pretty avidly with my father growing up. But I transitioned as an advocate because I had a very scary situation happen to me back in 2013 where I was put in a defensive situation. I didn't have a firearm, but I needed one. And so I basically caught somebody breaking into my vehicle. It got physical, went to the ground, ended up keeping control of the situation, but I was unarmed. So that was the most terrifying part of it because I didn't know if this person had a needle, a knife, anything that could have potentially harmed me. And I didn't have a gun. And so, obviously I didn't advocate shooting someone, but I wanted to have that tool that I needed to kind of help control that situation. My girlfriend at the time came out with a pistol grip shotgun, pointed the muzzle at the bad guy. The bad guy gave up. We called 911. Pretty textbook. And so from that moment on, it set me on my journey to become a gun rights advocate because now we are two good people with a gun. Didn't have to fire a shot, but it was that gun that helped kind of diffuse that situation. And so I became an instructor. As I became an instructor, I realized that there was a potential threat inside of a home when it comes to small children, their unsecured firearm or, lack of education. So then I started kind of developing a program. And so the Kids Safe Foundation became a nonprofit in 2016. We reached about 21,000 kids in 4 states and taught them life-saving skills.
So let's get into a little bit about more about what the Kids Safe Foundation is. You mentioned that because you have children yourself is why you wanted to start it. Talk about what it was like at the very beginning in 2016 when you were just beginning out with the Kids Safe Foundation, and how did you start growing it?
So basically, let me back up a little bit. It was about 2015 is when I actually had something to present to the public. Basically a lot of trial and error. I probably have a good 2,000 hours in front of kids and families, just kind of practicing and figuring out what kind of message works with them, and learning about how best I can interact with the children. And so from 2015 to 2016, that was kind of the trial and error phase of what we're doing. 2016, when I rolled it out, I'm from Eugene, Oregon, and so it's very left of center. They're not real friendly to guns here, but the way I was able to present the message, it was palatable to the public, and they did see the need for safety, and that's what kind of began the process, and it kind of catapulted us to where we are today. And it was just being really moderate with approach, and I kind of modeled our program similar to water safety because in the country we teach every kid how to swim because we don't want them to drown. That's kind of the same approach behind our firearm safety program. Is depending on where you live in the country, the climate depend on how dangerous pools are to kids. But being from Oregon, definitely firearms are more dangerous than pools just because of the climate.
Sure, sure. So you started off, and the what exactly does Kids Safe Foundation do? How do you get to children?
So we use, obviously, everything's through social media. We do in-person classes. We have a website that just launched that we're going to be incorporating video presentations for families so we can reach families all over the country. And ultimately, it just comes down to giving kids and families good relevant information when it comes to firearms. And the goal is to educate, not instill fear. We also follow up on the range with kids as well. So there's multiple things that we do to kind of get kids involved and show kids and families that guns aren't scary, and if used properly, if we instill safety, discipline, and respect, there's nothing for the public to be afraid of. And so that's what we're trying to do. Is we're trying to, when it comes to advocacy, we're trying to show the other side that there are meaningful solutions that could be done without restriction or more regulation, and it just comes down to good solid education.
All right. So let's I know for a fact because I've seen you do it when we were in Phoenix at Gun Rights Policy Conference. You will occasionally go into gun stores and have classes with kids. How often does that happen?
So right now it's a couple times a month. We're sponsored and partners with Bass Pro Shops and Cabela's, and so we teach at local Cabela's right now a couple times a month, and so that's where we're inviting kids and families to come in and sit down for an hour and just talk about safety, and we talk about firearms safety. We talk about proper storage of that firearm when it's not used. I'm a big advocate of secure storage. And while I respect, parents that, think it's their two-way right to just leave the gun out, I think we could do a little bit better to help protect our rights is to make sure that those guns are properly stored when they're not in use. But that being said, we don't need a new law requiring that. We just need to use a little bit of common sense and show the fact that if we think ahead of the curve, we might not be playing defense all the time. So, and then we talk about video games, video game violence. We're talking about Nerf guns, airsoft guns. We're also talking about anti-bullying in our program as well. So these are all things that are really relative to the safety of our kids.
When it comes to having unsecured firearms around children, I very much believe it's one of these things where just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Yeah, and that's kind of the pushback I get, and I'm respectful of all points of view. But I just want us to evolve, our thought process when it comes to being able to protect our rights. Is if we go a little bit further with our thought process, maybe we wouldn't have all these horrible restrictions that are coming down the pike.
Absolutely. So you go to Cabela's every couple weeks, and this is not just Cabela's in the Oregon area. You do these all over, right?
Yeah, typically what I do is if I go to a conference, I set up with a local Cabela's. I do a class there in that area just to kind of expand our network and our. Right now, we're in the final process of the trademarking, copywriting of our program, and so once we're done, we want to partner up with instructors from around the country that I know in the gun community, and also with other Bass Pro Shops and Cabela's store locations to get them involved to turn that 21,000 kids into 500,000 to a million kids. And if we can do that and get more kids involved in the shooting sports and show the public that we do have meaningful solutions that will work right now, that will do more to save a life than any type of meaningless regulation or restriction. That's kind of our goal. And we do it from a very moderate approach, right? I'm not screaming from the mountaintop, come and take it. I'm just trying to educate the public on the importance of safety.
Sure. Now, and these are when you make these presentation to kids, these are nonpartisan. This is just straight safety. This isn't saying you have to own a gun or your parents have to own a gun. This is very much if you happen to run across a gun, this is how to be safe around it. Is that correct?
Yeah, this is strictly apolitical. I have to be I walk a very, very fine line, because I am a proponent of guns and gun rights, but I also have to realize part of my audience is they're gonna be afraid of guns. But what they're seeing is through our messaging on social media is how their kids are very vulnerable without proper education. So we have a lot of people that come to classes without any guns, without any experience with guns, and that are afraid of guns. And so once we can show the safety and the discipline and respect with the firearms, we can actually get kids involved with the shooting sports and actually convert them into gun owners. So it's all about how we present the message. You know, if we make it inviting, show that it is normal because gun ownership is normal. That's a success for us in the 2A community.
Very cool. Very cool. So, where do you see? Let's explore specifically what's in the near future, say for the next 12 months. What do you see happening with Kids Safe Foundation?
So my goal is as soon as the trademark, copyright, every all the legal process is done,
Mm-hmm.
my goal is to partner with like-minded instructors around the country and have them teach our program in their area to the members of their community, and that's how we grow this. And is if we can stay really on point with the message, we can make up a lot of ground, and not necessarily be on the defensive all the time, but show the fact that there are people that do care about kids. They want their kids safe, and they also want them educated as well. I mean, that's the one thing that really kind of hurts me about restriction regulation, is it takes away the ability to educate the kids. And when we go into California, it's one of the highest restriction rates in the country.
Mm-hmm.
Those kids have zero access to education. Those kids are vulnerable because the parents can't talk about their guns, because typically most of the guns that they own are made illegal because of a pen stroke. Which so the parents have them, but they don't want to talk about them with their kids, and they're
Mm-hmm.
still in the home because they don't want to be turned into a felon. And those kids are very, very vulnerable.
All right, let's expand out then. What eventually, we've talked about over the next 12 months, what eventually would you like to see the Kids Safe Foundation become? What are your ultimate goals?
So the ultimate goal is, in 2019, I did write legislation here in the state of Oregon that would have authorized our program in all the first grade in the public schools. And so my goal would be to kind of help expand that to other parts of the country, to show, through education, we can do a lot to protect our children. And it comes through a very, very moderate approach where, we're not, demonizing our firearms. We're showing that they are tools and that we need to respect them and treat them appropriately. But we also need to make sure that we educate the kids. And so I think, right now with what's happening, there's going to be a big shift, pretty soon. And so all of us are going to be more active when it comes to be on the defensive. When, if we could do something a little bit offensively, like maybe put some effective legislation in some of these states, maybe that would help kind of stem the tide of gun control.
Awesome. Well, we are coming up on the time we have for today. Before we go, if someone's interested, if someone wants to help out, if somebody just wants more information about Kids Safe Foundation, where do they go?
Okay, so you can find us on our website, kidsafefoundation.org. That's with two S's. We're a 501c3 nonprofit, and so we're always looking for sponsors, corporate sponsors, to kind of help us grow this message and reach more kids. I mean, ultimately, I want to go from 21,000. I want to reach 10 million kids. And one thing I didn't mention is we are starting to translate our stuff into different languages, like Spanish, Russian, Chinese, Japanese. These are all, there's no education for these kids. American Sign Language is another one. There's no education in those cultures, and so that's what we're trying to do, is be very progressive with the thought process and have an educational program for those kids as well.
Very
And you can
cool.
also find us on all social media as well, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok as well.
Very, very cool. Derek, I want to thank you so much for taking time out of your day to talk to us, man.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate the time.
All right, folks, we're going to go ahead and set this one aside. Remember, if you would, to please subscribe and ring that notification bell so you know when another one comes out. And we will be releasing another one tomorrow. Come check us out then.